Hi, this is Denise with PaperKraftD, and I'm here today to share with you my latest creation. This is a journal, and it's actually part of a series that I'm doing that I'm calling my lingerie line. And I'm calling it my lingerie line because these journals are nearly naked. They're not quite naked. They do have some embellishments in them, but the cool part is all the embellishments are removable. You can take them out and use them in different projects. You can use them elsewhere within this journal. It really highly customizable. This is a very versatile little journal that you can do anything you want with, and it can go with any theme. And it is primarily all vintage papers and ephemera, even the book cover. But I'd say about 95% vintage. There are a few elements here and there that are not vintage, and I'll point those out as we go along in the flip through. You know, any of the metal pieces are not going to be vintage. You know, some of these trims here, these are laces that I've purchased, recently that aren't, these aren't vintage. But primarily it is all vintage. And this is a really easy to use. It has these spiral binding, and it's a lot of fun. I really hope you enjoy this. I'm going to go ahead and show you, flip through it. But first I wanted to just show you, this cover right here looks really decorated. The cool part about this cover is that it is literally a clip-on, and this is an over-the-page clip, and it's got this really beautiful piece of vintage ephemera, this lotto card, which I just love. I've got this at an estate sale, and I'm in love with these cards. I think they're just the most beautiful things ever. And this just goes right over the top of the cover like this, if you like this and you want to keep it this way. And it just clips on with this little embellished clip that I've got here. So, super, super easy. There are a couple little pieces of embellishment in here that are vintage. There's this vintage playing card, which I just love the colors on that. Isn't that gorgeous? This one happens to be the Queen of Hearts. And then there's this vintage flashcard. These are just, look at that. Isn't that just gorgeous? I just love this. I love those little cards. So you've seen how that comes off and it's easy to put back on. I'm just going to go ahead and start flipping through it. There is a little library pocket. That's the word I'm looking for, with a library card. I'm just calling this particular book Vintage Neutrals because the color of the cover is kind of a beige color. So I'm just going to slip that back in there. Kind of layers up like that. I think it looks kind of cool. This is made from a vintage Reader's Digest book. Okay, and this is one of the pages out of the book. The little iris, isn't that cute? And this is a vintage envelope with little daisies on there, and came with this paper, and you can see this is from 1981. So hard to believe that the 80s are vintage already, but they are. But I thought that was a really sweet little journaling set. There's this is actually a vintage index card. Got that at an estate sale as well. This is some vintage graph paper. I just love this old graph paper. It's so sheer and just beautiful. The colors are gorgeous. This is actually a vintage notepad. some vintage paper, again, from an estate sale. And look at you can just, I don't know if this is, the camera's picking up the, the yellowing and the aging along the edge. It's just, that patina is just gorgeous to me. This is another page out of the Reader's Digest book, and this text is upside down. I apologize. Something can be pasted over the top of that, or, you can gesso over the top. I tried not to do that, but a couple places, I'd already punched the holes on the sides, so there wasn't much I could do about that. Some vintage music paper, vintage sewing pattern, vintage cookbook. I've got this vintage playing card with some vintage S&H food stamps. Just thought those were super cute, and this really cute little clip from my stash. This isn't vintage, but it's just super cute. And then, this is a vintage, I don't know what, like a household finances type of, it's got these little household finances page. Okay, so this is another vintage piece of graph paper, ledger paper. This is a vintage bird book. I think it's from a little golden book. This is some mulberry paper, but it is not vintage. Some more of the beautiful graph paper in a different style. And this is from a vintage typewriting manual. I thought that was really cute with the hands. Again, a little piece from that vintage cookbook, some more music page. This little pocket here is made from a vintage envelope. And I just, these books were too small for these, big, I don't know, what, 11 by 17 envelopes. So I cut it down and made these little pockets out of it. I thought that turned out really cute. There's another one of these little flashcards in there. There's this really cute little ticket. Those are not vintage, and a doily, which is not vintage, and then a guest check, which is not vintage as well. And that just goes back on there like that. Some more vintage spiral bound paper. This is vintage wallpaper. I just thought that was really kind of a striking pattern. This is vintage steno notebooks paper. Oh, and this, let's see, there's some more of that vintage stuff. This is from a vintage stamp book. So that's really cool. This is some of the paper from this Reader's Digest book. And I just had, made a little pocket out of it, embossed it, inked it, and made a little pocket where we have some just really cute little ephemera. These pieces here are not vintage, but this is tissue paper from a vintage pattern. So you have, lots of this vintage pattern paper to play with, which is super fun. And then it's got these little tabs. These are little Denison tabs. I think there's, are they sticker? They're either sticker or you lick them. I'm not sure which. But these are actually, they're pretty thick. They're like chipboard. So you have 3 of those. You've got some little flowers. These are Prima flowers. They're not obviously vintage. We got this little 18-piece game piece from the Lotto game. This one is not vintage. And I've got this little, this is like a little wooden round piece that I stamped on. I thought this lady was super cute. If you don't like the lady, you can, you know, use the other side of it, put whatever you want on it. A little wooden button and a little metal key. So none of these things are vintage. These three pieces right here are vintage, as well as the sewing pattern. That is vintage as well. Okay, so that just goes back in there like that. That's the other side of it. And then this is a really nice, beautifully aged piece of, this is out of a scrapbook, really old vintage scrapbook. This is out of a book, The Player's Directory, and this is from the, I think, the late 40s. And these are just, you know, ladies of the screen. There's some music paper here. This is also vintage. Vintage book page. Got this little glassine envelope. That is not vintage. This little tag is not vintage, but this little playing card is vintage. So that was cute. And then we've got some little of these Tim Holtz pieces that you can, you know, use in this project or elsewhere. It's just on some silver metallic paper and inked up. This is from a vintage plant book. Some more vintage graph paper. I love this. Look at how sheer that is. Isn't that just, oh, so scrumptious. And I love this, the colors of these mimeograph papers. I mean, just look at that. That's so pretty. I just, and it's aged. I don't know. I just love it. I love the vintage stuff. This is from a vintage book. Another household, this is from a little binder that had these household finances papers. And this is vintage. I think this is 50s, from the 50s. This is another page from the Golden Book. Little golden book on birds. Here's another page from the Player's Directory. This one's about the men, the heartthrobs. We've got this, another piece of that vintage cookbook. I just made a little pocket out of it. And this is a vintage recipe card. And it's really cool because it opens up pretty big. So it folds like that. And that just has a little doily. And this, you know, these pieces are not vintage, but just thought they were cute and you can use them in this. And again, you know, all of these are removable. You don't have to keep any of this in here. That's why I'm calling it Nearly Naked. This is from a vintage atlas. I've got a couple little tags in here. These are not vintage tags, but the atlas is vintage. Oh, this is some beautiful vintage typewriter paper, and I don't know if you can actually see the watermark on there, but it is stunning. Let's see. I don't know if you can see the watermark on there or not, but it is absolutely stunning. Oh, there. Now it's showing up. Isn't that gorgeous? Oh, and this is vintage typewriter paper from an estate sale that I got. This is another one of those household finance papers. This is a excuse me, this is a reproduction of a Dick and Jane book. And it's not quite vintage, but it's from the 90s, so it's almost vintage. It's vintage-esque. This is for more of that typewriter manual. I've got this really cute little cluster right here. This is a vintage mailing label. And then just some little tickets here. These are not vintage, but I thought they looked really cute together on the page. And then these are really fine little pages out of a vintage dictionary. They're really, really thin. You could take these, tear them out pretty easily from this because it's a spiral bound. Use it in collage if you want. You can keep them in here like this. You could glue a couple of the pages together to make them a little thicker, so that you maybe gesso on them and journal over the top. But I thought I'd let you figure out how you want to use these. But just really interesting pages with tables and graphs and all sorts of stuff. This has lots of room for journaling. This particular section looks like it's organic chemistry, so that's kind of fun. So anyway, just a lot of interest there. I just kind of grouped all of these pages together because they're, those thin pages are kind of fragile, so I didn't want them to get damaged. Some more of that stamp book, and again a page from the scrapbook. Look at that patina on there. Oh, isn't that gorgeous? All right, so nearly naked, nearly, not quite naked, nearly naked. Everything in here can come out very easily. You can customize this, make it any theme you want. Super easy to remove any of the ephemera, any of the pages if you don't happen to like a particular page or you want to use it elsewhere in a different project. I'm going to adjust that a little bit because I kind of like it over a little bit more. There we go. But it looks really pretty like this, and if you wanted to glue these pieces down onto this cover, you could, but I didn't want to do that for you because, again, I just want these books to be super versatile for whatever a person wants to use with them. Now, I have this one, which is in beige, and I'm calling this my vintage neutral. I've also got this blue one, which I'm just calling very simply vintage blue. And these are all very similar, have all, the pages are all in about exactly the same order. Now, of course, like with the book pages, they're going to be different, they're going to be the same type of pages, but the images are going to be different. So like in this one, I have, this really beautiful page of this lady up front, but again, very similar, the colors might be a little different, but it's essentially the same type of thing. We've got the same elements in here, different ladies, of course, because, there are different pages out of there, different birds, but essentially the same types of things. Okay, so that's the vintage blue book, and you can see the flashcards are different, of course. Okay, I've got one in yellow that I'm calling Vintage Sunroom. Okay, you can see. Very, very similar, but slightly different. Of course, the ladies are different. Different birds. Different Dick and Jane pictures. So, you know, you get the idea. So this is my vintage sunroom. This one I'm calling vintage greenery. Vintage greenery. It's got this beautiful tulips here. Okay, so that's the vintage greenery. And the fifth and final one is what I'm calling vintage grayish, because this cover is kind of a gray color. Grayish color, really. It's really beautiful. It's like almost reminiscent of like palm fronds. Look at that. Isn't that just gorgeous? I just love that pattern. So I thought that these orange birds were really striking with that background. And I really tried to make these very, you know, where you see all the different layers as you go through, so that you keep on wanting to flip through, you keep on wanting to move forward. It's just, I just love, you know, that's what I love most about junk journals, is just, you know, seeing all those different layers and the interest. And look at those ladies. Aren't they just stunning? Oh, I love them. Oh, I really love this page. Look at that. Isn't that pretty? Oh, I love those colors. Got this mustard yellow. It's so pretty. Some more birds. Here's our leading men. And there's our Dick and Jane. Okay. So yeah, so I love those colors. So yeah, so the back of this one, you know, the cover is this grayish color. This green, the back of it is this beautiful green marbling. Isn't that gorgeous? This yellow is the yellow marbling. Isn't that beautiful? That's the vintage sunroom. I love this blue one too. These little precious little flowers. It's like a periwinkle blue. So pretty. And then you've already seen the neutral, the beige one. That's the one that I did the walkthrough for. So this is my nearly naked lingerie line. I will be posting these in my Etsy shop. Hopefully they'll be up by the time this video goes up. If not, then shortly afterwards. I hope you enjoyed these. I hope you guys like these. I'm trying to, you know, just put them in as a very affordable price point, but, you know, that has a lot of vintage ephemera and pages. So, you know, that's where, you know, most of the cost for these is. You know, I have to account for that, but I just love them. I love them. I think they're super versatile. You know, you take these apart, they can be used for journals of, you know, any theme. They could even be a great December daily base. So, you know, and you can use these more romantic, shabby chic type embellishments elsewhere in a different journal if you like. And if you like it together, you can keep it together. You know, that's the beauty of these, is that they're very, very versatile. So anyway, again, I hope you enjoyed these. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know if you like this style. I'm really curious to see, you know, how these are doing. This is different than what I've done before. Like I said, I'm not using any printables in this. It's all vintage book pages and ephemera, and even the books themselves are vintage or very nearly vintage. Some of them are like, some of these book covers, these Reader Digest might be like mid-80s. So like, I think the oldest one, or the newest one is 1985. So not quite vintage, because we, you know, 1982 would be considered vintage. It's 40 years ago. Oh my God, I feel so old. But you know, close to being vintage. So what was my point? I hope you like these. I really love the way they turned out, and I hope you like them as much as I do. Thank you so much for joining me today. Again, this is Denise of PaperKraftD, and craft on.